My son left me in the middle of a deserted highway in another state, saying, I don't need extra mouths to feed in my house. I, an old father who raised him, loved him, and helped him, stood under the scorching sun, but not as a victim. When he returned home, he found my note on the refrigerator. After reading it, he called me 47 times, panicking. But justice was just beginning, with revenge he didn't expect. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. 42 years. 42 years I raised him. And this is what I get. My weathered hands trembled as I stared at the inheritance documents spread across my mahogany desk. The pen felt heavy between my fingers, refusing to move toward the signature line. Behind me, Martha's jewelry box played our wedding song, that damn melody she loved so much. Even 2 years after her funeral, I couldn't bring myself to wind it down. 9:47 p.m. on July 3rd, 2023. The house felt too quiet, too empty, despite Tobias and his family sleeping upstairs. My family, or what was left of it. I picked up Martha's photo from the corner of my desk. Her smile looked back at me, frozen in time from our 40th anniversary dinner. She'd worn that blue dress I bought her, the one that matched her eyes. Her voice echoed in my memory, clear as if she were sitting right beside me. Don't let our boy take advantage of your good heart, Zeb. People show their true faces when they think nobody's watching. The musty smell of old wood mixed with the faint trace of her perfume that still lingered in this room. I touched the cold metal of her wedding ring on my finger, the ring I'd never taken off since the day she died. Tobias had forgotten my 68th birthday last month, completely forgotten. When I'd called him that evening, he'd laughed it off. Sorry, Dad, work's been crazy. But I'd seen his calendar on the kitchen counter, golf tournament that same day. He'd remembered that just fine. And when I'd had those chest pains 3 weeks ago? It's probably just indigestion, Dad. You worry too much. No offer to drive me to the doctor. No real concern in his voice. Just irritation at being bothered. I closed my eyes and heard Martha's words again, spoken from her hospital bed with what little strength she had left. Watch how he acts when he thinks he's getting something, Zeb. That's when you'll see who he really is. The legal documents rustled as I pushed them aside. My chest felt tight, each breath harder than the last. Through the window, I could see Tobias's car in the driveway, a BMW he somehow afforded while asking me to cover groceries. Maybe it's time to see Tobias's true face. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting after hours of sitting. The inheritance papers went back into the desk drawer, unsigned. The house keys felt heavy in my other hand as I walked to the window, watching the shadows dance across the yard Martha had loved so much. A test. That's what Martha would have wanted. A way to know for certain what kind of man my son really is. Tomorrow morning, I'll find out what kind of man my son really is. The bacon sizzled in the cast-iron pan as morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. 7:15 a.m., July 5th, and I'd been awake since 5, rehearsing the words in my head. The round breakfast table sat exactly as it had for 3 years. Tobias at the head, Joanna to his right, the kids across from each other. My spot at the far end where I could watch everyone's faces. Tobias poured his coffee, already checking his phone for work emails. The kids were arguing over the last piece of toast, while Joanna buttered their bread with mechanical precision. Normal? Everything perfectly normal? I cleared my throat and set down my coffee mug. I got a call yesterday evening from the plant. Tobias looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised. Joanna's hand paused mid-butter. Emily and Lucas kept eating, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. They're letting me go? Budget cuts? After 25 years? The silence stretched exactly 4 seconds. I counted them. Watched Tobias's face change from surprise to calculation, then to something harder, colder. What does that mean, Grandpa? Emily asked, her 12-year-old voice cutting through the tension. It means I won't have much income anymore, sweetheart. My pension won't cover much more than basic necessities. Lucas continued spooning cereal into his mouth, completely uninterested in adult problems. But Tobias pushed his chair back slightly, creating distance. I saw it happen. The physical recoil. Dad, I can't afford to support extra people right now. His voice carried that same irritation I'd heard when I'd called about my chest pains. I have my own family to think about, my own responsibilities. My hands tightened around my coffee mug. The ceramic felt hot against my palms, almost burning, but I didn't let go. Joanna nodded quickly, backing him up like she always did. Tobias is right, Zeb. We're barely managing our own expenses as it is. The kids have school fees, sports equipment. Is Grandpa going to be okay? Emily's voice wavered with genuine concern. He'll figure something out, Tobias said dismissively, already turning back to his phone. There are programs for seniors. Assistance options. Programs? Assistance options. Like I was some stranger off the street instead of the man who'd raised him, fed him, put him through college. The cold calculation in his voice hit me harder than Martha's death had. At least with her, I'd known what was coming. This felt like being stabbed by someone I'd trusted completely. Well, I said slowly, pushing back from the table, I need to think about this. You'll land on your feet, Dad. Tobias's attention was already back on his email. You always do. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 68 years in my bones. The kitchen suddenly felt foreign, despite having eaten breakfast at this same table for 3 decades. Even the morning light seemed different, harsher, showing too much. I think I'll rest for a while. I closed the bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, shoulders sagging under the weight of what had just happened. 7:45 a.m., and already the day felt unbearable. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from climbing the stairs, but from the cold shock of seeing my son's true nature laid bare. The master bedroom looked exactly as it had since Martha died, her side of the bed still untouched, pillow fluffed the way she liked it. Her vanity held the same perfume bottles, the same hairbrush with strands of gray hair still tangled in the bristles. Her wedding ring dish sat empty. I wore her ring now, along with my own. 3 years. 3 years I've been telling myself it was temporary. I walked to the dresser and picked up our wedding photo. Martha's young face smiled back at me, radiant in white lace. Next to it, Tobias's graduation picture from 20 years ago. He'd been so proud that day. So grateful. Thanks for everything, Dad. I'll make you proud. The irony burned in my chest. I sank onto the edge of the bed, holding Martha's photo with both hands. Through the window, I could see Tobias's BMW gleaming in the driveway, the car he'd bought 6 months after moving in temporarily. When had I stopped questioning that? The move-in conversation played in my memory like a broken record. 3 years ago, right here in this house. Tobias had stood in our kitchen, Joanna beside him, both looking desperate and grateful. Just until we get back on our feet, Dad. 6 months, tops. We'll contribute what we can for utilities and groceries. And me, foolish and lonely after Martha's first heart attack. Take all the time you need. Martha always wanted a full house. But Martha had seen through it before I did. I remembered her sitting right here on this bed 2.5 years ago, worry creasing her forehead. They're getting too comfortable, Zeb. When did you last see Tobias look for houses? He's working hard, Martha. It takes time to save up for a down payment. She'd touched my hand then, her fingers still warm despite the illness. People show their true faces when they think nobody's watching. Remember that. I dismissed her concerns as sickness talking, but Martha had been watching. She'd seen Tobias's contributions dwindle from $200 a month to $50, then to, I'll catch up next month when the promotion comes through. She'd watched him buy the BMW while claiming he couldn't afford to help with groceries. She'd noticed Joanna's expensive shopping trips while pleading poverty. When did I become the burden in my own house? The utilities had tripled. The grocery bills doubled. Wear and tear on everything from the washing machine to the water heater. And me, making excuses for why they couldn't contribute more, why they couldn't find their own place, why everything was always my responsibility. I pressed Martha's photo against my chest, wishing I could ask her forgiveness for being so blind. Downstairs, I heard the murmur of voices, Tobias and Joanna talking in low, urgent tones. What are they discussing down there? I stood up, curiosity overriding my exhaustion, and moved toward the door to listen. The muffled voices from downstairs cut through my grief like a knife through silence. I set Martha's photo back on the dresser, my hands trembling with something beyond sorrow now. 9:30 in the evening, and Tobias and Joanna were having one of their kitchen conferences, the kind they thought I couldn't hear. My bedroom door creaked as I opened it slowly. The old hinges had been meaning to oil for months, but tonight their protests seemed loud as thunder. I paused, listening. Their voices continued below, urgent but controlled. Whatever they were discussing, they didn't want the children to hear. The hallway stretched before me, lit only by the streetlight filtering through the window at the far end. Each step down the stairs required careful placement. I knew which boards creaked and which stayed silent. After 30 years in this house, every sound was mapped in my memory. At the bottom of the staircase, I could see the kitchen doorway glowing with warm light. The dishwasher hummed its familiar cycle, providing perfect cover for their conversation. I pressed myself against the wall, just outside the entrance, and listened. "This trip idea is perfect," Tobias was saying, his voice carrying that same calculating tone I'd heard at breakfast. "We'll drive through those desert areas in New Mexico. Lots of empty space out there." My heart hammered against my ribs. I fumbled for my phone, nearly dropping it in my haste. The screen lit up, showing 67% battery. My thick fingers struggled with the touch screen. Video recording started first, the camera pointing at my ceiling. "And if something happens to him out there?" Joanna's voice was cold, matter of fact. "Well, old people get confused. They wander off. Heat exhaustion, dehydration. It happens all the time." I managed to switch to voice recording just as Tobias responded. "Exactly. We'll search for a while. Call the authorities. Play the worried family. He just walked away from our campsite. We looked everywhere." The phone trembled in my grip. 3 years of generosity. 3 years of open doors and shared meals. And this was their gratitude. "Without him, the house becomes ours automatically," Joanna continued. "We can finally stop pretending to care about his stories, his needs, his constant presence." 3 years of playing the grateful son, Tobias agreed. "I'm done with it. This inheritance thing pushed me over the edge. I can't keep supporting dead weight." Cold sweat broke across my forehead despite the summer heat. My legs felt weak, but I kept the phone steady, recording every poisonous word. Martha's voice echoed in my memory. "People show their true faces when they think nobody's watching." "The beauty is, it solves everything," Joanna said. "No more grocery bills, utility costs, medical expenses. Just us and our real family. And a house we can finally sell," Tobias added. "Clear our debts. Start fresh somewhere else." I'd heard enough, more than enough. My phone showed a recording of 3 minutes and 47 seconds, enough to destroy them both. Moving as quietly as I'd descended, I climbed back to my bedroom, gripping the handrail for support. Back on the edge of my bed, I stared at the phone screen. The recording file sat there like a loaded weapon, waiting to be used. But not yet. They wanted to play games with an old man's life? "Well, Martha, looks like you were right about people showing their true faces." Steam rose from my coffee cup as I stirred it slowly, watching Tobias fidget with his phone across the breakfast table. 7:30 in the morning, July 6th, and I'd spent the sleepless night planning every detail of my response. The kitchen felt different now. Not like home, but like a stage where we'd all perform our parts. Tobias kept glancing at Joanna, seeking encouragement for whatever script they'd rehearsed. She nodded and smiled at appropriate moments, playing the supportive wife. The children ate their cereal, blissfully unaware that their parents had spent the evening planning murder. "How did you sleep, Dad?" Tobias asked, his voice painted with false concern. "You looked pretty tired yesterday." I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time to arrange my expression into something appropriately defeated. "Not well, son. This whole situation has me worried sick." "Perfect." I could almost see the relief in their eyes. Joanna leaned forward with practiced sympathy. "These things have a way of working out, Zeb. Family always finds a way through difficult times." "Speaking of family," Tobias said, his timing rehearsed to perfection, "I've been thinking about yesterday. About what I said. I was too harsh." My phone sat beside my coffee cup, voice memo already running. Let them dig their own graves with words. "I appreciate that, son. These old bones were feeling pretty beaten down." Tobias exchanged another glance with Joanna before continuing. "What if we took a family trip? Something to bring us all together, heal these wounds between us." Emily looked up from her cereal, suddenly interested. "A trip? Where?" "I was thinking the Grand Canyon," Tobias said, warming to his performance. Remember when Mom and I took you there as a kid, Dad? You always said it was one of your favorite memories. The mention of Martha in this context nearly broke my composure. They were using her memory to justify their plan to kill me. But I forced my voice to remain steady, even grateful. That sounds wonderful, Tobias. When were you thinking? Next week? He was gaining confidence now, probably thinking his manipulation was working. I can take vacation days from work, make it a real adventure for the whole family. Lucas bounced in his chair. Can we see real cowboys, Grandpa? We'll see all kinds of amazing things, Lucas, I said, ruffling his hair. Inside, rage burned cold and steady, but my voice stayed warm for the children. Joanna jumped in with her prepared enthusiasm. It would be good for all of us. The children loved traveling with their grandfather, and it would give us time to really talk, work through everything. The drive itself could be beautiful, Tobias added. We could take the scenic route through New Mexico, see some of that famous desert landscape. There it was, the desert, the empty places where old men disappear. How long of a drive would that be? I asked, playing my part in their deadly theater. Oh, 8 or 9 hours, Tobias said casually. But we'd take our time. Stop whenever you need to rest. Stop whenever they needed to abandon me, more likely. I let a smile cross my face, the first genuine one I'd felt since this nightmare began. That sounds absolutely perfect, son. I think Martha would have loved the idea of us all taking this trip together. Joanna practically glowed with satisfaction. Should we plan for next Thursday? Give us time to prepare? July 12th, I agreed. I'll need to make some preparations for our trip. Morning heat already shimmered off the asphalt as I watched Tobias load the last suitcase into the SUV's cargo area. 6:45 a.m. July 12th, and the organized chaos of family departure masked the deadly game we were all playing. Emily and Lucas ran between house and car, clutching forgotten tablets and favorite stuffed animals. The past week had been a masterpiece of preparation. While Tobias researched desert routes and Joanna planned meal stops, I'd been conducting my own research. Mike Harlan, a truck driver I'd contacted through online forums, would be at the Desert Oasis station outside Albuquerque. My survival supplies were packed beneath layers of clothes in my duffel bag. Most importantly, my insurance policy waited in the kitchen. Emily Lucas, do you have your tablets for the drive? Joanna called, checking items off her mental list. Got them, Mom. Emily waved her device while Lucas struggled with his backpack zipper. Tobias wiped sweat from his forehead despite the early hour. Dad, you sure you have everything? It's a long trip, and we won't be stopping much once we hit the desert. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just need to grab my reading glasses, I said, patting my shirt pocket theatrically. Won't be a minute. I walked back into the house with casual determination. The kitchen felt empty, waiting. Behind the refrigerator, held by Martha's favorite flower magnet, I placed the note I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. I overheard your conversation on July 5th about solving the dad problem during this trip. Every word is recorded on my phone and backed up. If I don't return home safely within 24 hours, my lawyer receives copies, along with instructions to contact authorities. I know about your debts, Tobias, and your motives. Choose wisely. Dad, perfect placement. They'd find it when they returned to pack up my belongings, probably within hours of abandoning me. The timing would create maximum panic. Are we really going to see the Grand Canyon, Grandpa? Lucas asked as I rejoined them at the car. We're going to see some amazing sights, Lucas, I said, climbing into the back seat behind the children's row. Things that will surprise everyone. The SUV's interior smelled of new leather and Joanna's vanilla air freshener. Tobias adjusted his mirrors and checked the GPS one final time. 8 hours and 37 minutes to their destination, according to the screen. The fuel tank showed completely full. They'd thought of everything for their perfect crime. Everyone comfortable? Tobias asked, his voice carrying forced cheer. Ready for our adventure, Joanna added, twisting around to smile at us. I settled back in my seat, feeling the weight of the hidden water bottles and energy bars in my luggage beside me. My phone showed full charge, and the backup battery pack was tucked safely in my jacket pocket. Mike Harlan's contact information was memorized and written on paper hidden in my wallet. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and I took one last look at the house Martha and I had called home for 40 years. In a few hours, Tobias and Joanna would execute their plan, but they had no idea that their victim had become the hunter. The highway stretched ahead, desert heat already shimmering in the distance. Classic rock hummed from the radio as farmland gave way to brown scrub brush and distant mesas. 12:30 in the afternoon, and we'd been driving for 5.5 hours through Missouri, across Oklahoma, and now into the endless expanse of New Mexico. The air conditioning worked overtime against the building heat outside. "Grandpa, tell us about when you built that treehouse for Dad." Lucas bounced in his middle seat, tablet forgotten for the moment. I smiled, watching Tobias's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Your father was about your age, always wanting to climb higher than was safe. We spent 3 weekends on that project." "Dad was good with tools?" Emily asked, genuinely surprised. "The best little helper I ever had," I said, remembering grease-stained hands and eager questions about every wrench and nail. "He could hand me the right tool before I even asked." Tobias shifted uncomfortably. "That was a long time ago, Dad." For hours this had been the pattern. Genuine family memories, children's laughter, Tobias playing the devoted son. "You comfortable back there? Need me to adjust the air?" he'd asked twice. "Want to stop for a stretch?" Every 15 minutes, some small gesture of care. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe yesterday was just stress talking, fear making me paranoid. But then I'd catch those quick glances between Tobias and Joanna when they thought I wasn't watching. The way she checked the GPS obsessively, making notes on a small pad. The increasing tension in Tobias's shoulders as the landscape grew more desolate. "Are we almost there?" Emily whined. "This is taking forever." "Just a few more hours, sweetie," Joanna said, her voice tight with false cheer. "Grandpa's treat, remember?" Through the window, I watched mile markers flash by. The interstate had given way to Route 66, and civilization was spacing out dramatically. Gas stations appeared maybe every 30 miles now. The children had grown quiet, worn down by heat and travel fatigue. My phone showed no signal bars. We were entering the dead zone I'd researched, where cell towers were sparse, and help was hours away. "This country sure is empty," I observed, keeping my voice casual. "That's the beauty of it," Tobias replied. "Pure wilderness. A man could disappear out here and never be found." The words hit like ice water in my veins. All my doubts evaporated in that instant. Joanna shot him a sharp look, but the damage was done. I caught his eyes in the mirror again, and this time I saw the calculation there. The cold assessment of a predator measuring his prey. Mile marker 247 appeared ahead. Tobias slowed the SUV. "I really need to use the restroom," I said, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "Can't wait anymore." "Of course, Dad." Tobias pulled to the shoulder with practiced ease. "Take your time." I climbed out into the blazing heat, feeling sweat immediately bead on my forehead. The children were already arguing about something, their voices muffled through closed windows. Tobias stepped out too, ostensibly to stretch his legs, but he stayed near the driver's door, engine running. "Thanks for this trip, son," I said, looking directly at him. "It means everything to an old man." Something flickered across his face. Maybe guilt, maybe just impatience. "Nothing personal, Dad," he said quietly. "Just business." The engine roared. Gravel sprayed from the tires. Emily and Lucas pressed their faces against the back window, confusion turning to tears as they watched their grandfather standing alone on the empty highway. The SUV disappeared into heat shimmer, leaving only silence and the merciless afternoon sun. "Well, Martha, time to see if your old husband learned your lessons about preparation." Heat radiated from the asphalt in visible waves as I watched the empty highway, where my family had vanished. 1:15 in the afternoon, temperature climbing toward its daily peak. Sweat already darkened my shirt, but my breathing stayed controlled, methodical. 40 years on factory floors had taught me about working in extreme conditions. First things first, I pulled out my phone, confirming what I already knew. No signal bars. The screen showed 89% battery, plenty for what I needed. My research had been accurate. This stretch of Route 66 sat in a dead zone between cell towers. Visual survey next. Mesa formations rose in the distance like ancient monuments. Scrub brush dotted the landscape, offering minimal shade. No buildings visible in any direction. Traffic sparse, maybe one vehicle every 20 minutes. Perfect place for murder if you didn't know your victim had spent a week preparing. I unbuttoned my coat and reached into the specially sewn inner pockets. Two 16-ounce water bottles, still cool from the car's air conditioning. From my pants pockets came 4 energy bars and a small bag of trail mix. Enough fuel for a long walk. The hand-drawn map emerged from my wallet, edges reinforced with tape. Desert Oasis gas station, 6 miles east along Route 66. I'd memorized the route, but seeing it on paper brought comfort. Mike Harlan's contact information was written on waterproof paper, tucked behind my driver's license. 6 miles to Desert Oasis, I said aloud, my voice swallowed by the vast silence. Mike said he'd be there this week. Tobias thought he'd left a helpless old man to die. Poor boy didn't know his father had been planning for the worst while hoping for the best, Martha's favorite saying. She'd taught me to think 3 moves ahead, whether fixing a broken machine or dealing with broken people. I adjusted my baseball cap and secured my sunglasses. The sturdy walking shoes I'd chosen specifically for this trip gripped the asphalt well. My lightweight shirt would help with ventilation, and the pants protected my legs from sun exposure. The emergency cash was distributed across multiple hiding spots. 2 20s in my left shoe, hundreds folded into my belt, 50s tucked into my wallet. If I made it to civilization, I'd have options. Temperature gauge in the car had read 97 degrees when they'd abandoned me. By mid-afternoon, it would peak around 105. I'd need to pace myself carefully, conserve energy and water. Small sips every 15 minutes, not gulping. Rest in any available shade. Factory safety training had covered heat exhaustion. I knew the warning signs. Dizziness, nausea, excessive fatigue. But I also knew my own endurance. Decades of 10-hour shifts on concrete floors had built leg strength most men my age lacked. My phone showed the time, 1:23 p.m. I tucked the map into my shirt pocket, took one small sip of water, and faced east toward my destination. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, shimmering with heat mirages that created false lakes on the horizon. In the distance, I could hear the rumble of freight trucks on a parallel route. Civilization still existed, just beyond immediate reach. 6 miles. In this heat, maybe 2 hours if I pace myself right. Rhythm. That's what sustained a man through difficult work, finding the right pace and holding it steady. 30 minutes into my eastward walk, my feet had found their beat on the hot asphalt. Left, right. Breathe. Left, right. Breathe. The desert sun hammered down, but sweat evaporated quickly in the dry air. Mile 1 passed with memories of 8-year-old Tobias, dirt-smudged and curious, standing beside me in the garage. "Dad, how does the engine make the car go?" Wide eyes absorbing every explanation about pistons and combustion, his small hands eager to hold tools, to help, to learn from the man he considered his hero. "You're the smartest dad in the world," he'd announced after I fixed his bicycle chain. Martha had laughed from the doorway, flour on her apron from Sunday baking. "Your father knows how to make broken things work again," she told him. "That's a gift." First water break at mile 2. Small sip, cap twisted tight, bottle returned to pocket. The liquid was warm now, but still refreshing. A truck rumbled past. Driver too focused on his schedule to notice a lone figure walking the shoulder. Teenage Tobias had been different, embarrassed when friends asked about my job. "Do you have to tell everyone you work at the factory?" he'd muttered after a school event. High school brought new friends, college ambitions, shame about blue-collar roots. The questions stopped coming. The garage became a place he avoided. Mile 3 brought shade from a highway sign, 30 seconds of relief from the relentless sun. My shirt clung to my back, but breathing remained steady. Heat exhaustion hadn't touched me yet. Good conditioning from a lifetime of physical labor. College had widened the gap. Visits home filled with lectures about modern economics and thinking bigger. "Dad, you don't understand how the world works now," he'd explain, fresh from business classes. Meanwhile, my factory paychecks funded his education, his dreams, his growing contempt for the man who made it all possible. Marriage to Joanna sealed the transformation. Suddenly my stories became interruptions, my presence an embarrassment. Family dinners shortened to obligatory appearances. "When are you going to start acting your age?" he'd asked last Christmas, annoyed by my attempts to engage his children. Mile 4 tested my endurance. Heat mirages created phantom lakes ahead, desert tricks that promised relief but delivered only more scorching emptiness. I adjusted my pace slightly, conserving energy. The desert oasis station wasn't visible yet, but my map showed 2 miles remaining. Martha's final months had revealed Tobias at his worst, impatient with her medication schedules, irritated by her weakness, eager for the inheritance conversations to begin. I'd watched him calculate dollar signs while his mother struggled for breath. "He's not the boy you raised," she'd whispered one evening when Tobias had left early from visiting hours. "That boy died somewhere along the way. This one just wears his face." Mile 5 brought the first glimpse of civilization, a faint structure shimmering in the distance. My phone showed 1 bar of signal returning as I approached the coverage area. They'd be discovering my note soon, if they hadn't already. When did I become the embarrassment instead of the teacher? When did 40 years of honest work become something to hide from friends? I'd spent my career fixing broken machines, believing I could fix broken relationships too. But some damage ran too deep for repair. The desert oasis station grew larger with each step, real and solid against the wavering heat. My phone chirped with returning signal strength. 2 bars now, enough for calls. I quickened my pace slightly, anticipation building. Martha always said I had the patience to outlast any problem. Today, I'd test that theory against desert heat and family betrayal. 2 bars of signal. They'll be calling soon. The moment I stepped into the desert oasis station, my phone erupted like a digital earthquake. Buzz after buzz after buzz, the screen lighting up with notification after notification. The blessed coolness of air conditioning hit my sweat-soaked shirt as I stared at the chaos unfolding on my phone. 47 missed calls, all from Tobias. Each notification felt like a small victory. The call log told the story of growing desperation. First call at 2:15 p.m., right after they would have discovered my absence. Then every few minutes, faster and faster as panic set in. Text messages from Joanna scattered between the calls. "Call us back now!" And "Where are you?" And "Emergency." 15 voicemails waited like little packages of fear. I turned the phone to silent and slipped it into my pocket. Let them sweat a little longer. "You look like you've been walking in this heat," said the clerk behind the counter, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Her name tag read, Maria. "Everything okay?" "Car trouble back on the highway," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "Is the motel still open for check-in?" "Of course, honey. You need me to call anyone for help? Family, maybe?" I almost laughed. "No, thank you. I've got everything handled." While Maria processed my motel registration, I allowed myself to listen to the first voicemail. Tobias's voice tight with forced calm. "Dad, where are you? We stopped for gas, and when we came back, you weren't there. We're searching the area. Please call us back." Voicemail 15 showed cracks in the facade. "Please, Dad, just call us back. We're worried sick. Where could you have gone?" By voicemail 32, the mask had completely slipped. "I found your note. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. You don't understand what you heard." The note. My insurance policy, written in careful block letters and hidden behind Martha's flower magnet where they'd find it when they returned to pack my belongings. "I overheard your conversation on July 5th about solving the dad problem during this trip. Every word is recorded on my phone and backed up. If I don't return home safely within 24 hours, my lawyer receives copies along with instructions to contact authorities. I know about your debts, Tobias, and your motives. Choose wisely, Dad." I'd spent hours crafting those words, making them specific enough to frighten but vague enough to maintain my advantage. Maria handed me the room key. Room 7 just down the walkway. Ice machines at the end, and there's a diner next door if you're hungry. I purchased cold water, electrolyte drinks, and a clean shirt from the station's convenience section. My phone buzzed again, call 48. I ignored it with growing satisfaction. The motel room was basic, but clean, with a bed that looked like heaven after my desert walk. I plugged my phone into the charger and watched it buzz again with incoming call 49. Through the window, I could see the truck parking area, where Mike Harlan would arrive tomorrow morning. 47 calls in 2.5 hours. Martha would be proud of my arithmetic and my planning. Mike said he'd be here tonight. Tomorrow, we head home. Steam rose from my coffee cup as I watched the parking lot through the caf window. 7:30 in the morning, July 13th, and right on schedule. A blue Peterbilt semi-truck rumbled into the desert oasis lot. Air brakes hissed as Mike Harlan brought the big rig to a smooth stop. I'd slept better than I had in weeks. Funny how peace of mind works. Mike climbed down from the cab with the easy confidence of a man who'd been driving highways for 25 years. 55 years old, weathered face, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He spotted me through the window and raised his hand in greeting. "Right on time," he said as he entered the caf. "Hope you got some rest after your ordeal." "Best sleep I've had in weeks," I replied, standing to shake his calloused hand. "I can't thank you enough for this. Not everyone would help a stranger." Mike waved off my gratitude. "Road teaches you who you can trust. You've got honest eyes, Zeb. Springfield's about 8 hours with my delivery schedule. Perfect timing." Within 20 minutes, my minimal belongings were secured in the truck's sleeper compartment, and I was settled into the comfortable passenger seat. Mike had prepared a thermos of coffee and homemade sandwiches for the journey. The CB radio crackled occasionally with trucker communications, and country music played softly from the stereo. "Family's supposed to support each other, not use each other," Mike said as we merged onto I-40 East. He'd asked no direct questions about my situation, but I'd shared the basics. Car trouble, family tensions, needing a ride home. "That's what I always believed," I said, watching New Mexico desert give way to Oklahoma plains. 42 years raising a son, and I thought I knew what kind of man he'd become. Mike nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I've got 2 kids myself, divorced 15 years now, but my ex and I always put the children first. Can't imagine blood family turning on each other." The miles rolled by with easy conversation. Mike told stories of the road, kindnesses from strangers, the community among long-haul drivers, the satisfaction of honest work. I found myself sharing memories of Martha, carefully edited versions of recent events, reflections on how values seem to have shifted over the generations. "Your wife sounds like she was a wise woman," Mike said after I quoted one of Martha's favorite sayings about people showing their true faces. "She saw through people like they were made of glass," I agreed. I should have listened to her warnings sooner. The truck's comfortable rhythm, the steady conversation, and Mike's genuine decency created a healing space. Here was a stranger showing more consideration than my own son had managed in years. The contrast wasn't lost on me. We stopped twice at truck stops for fuel and mandatory rest breaks. Mike insisted on buying lunch, refusing my offers to pay. "You'll do the same for someone else someday," he said simply. As afternoon turned to evening, familiar landmarks began appearing. The water tower visible from my neighborhood came into view as we approached Springfield's outskirts, home, where a reckoning waited. "That's my exit coming up," I said, pointing ahead. "Home sweet home." Mike's truck disappeared around the corner as I walked up my familiar driveway. 6:45 in the evening, and shadows stretched across the lawn I'd maintained for decades. Every window blazed with light. They were home, waiting, watching for any sign of news about the missing grandfather. My key turned in the lock I'd installed 20 years ago. The front door swung open. "Dad!" Tobias shot up from the living room couch like he'd been electrocuted. "Thank goodness you're safe. We've been searching for hours." Joanna appeared beside him, her face a masterpiece of fake relief. "We have no idea what happened. 1 minute you were there, the next you'd vanished. We've been worried sick." Emily and Lucas ran to me with genuine happiness, wrapping their arms around my waist. Their joy was real. Innocent children caught in their parents' web of lies. 47 phone calls suggest you weren't searching," I said calmly, returning the children's hugs. "You were panicking." Tobias's face flickered with confusion before settling back into his performance. "We called because we were desperate to find you. Dad, you're confused. We would never—" "The note on the refrigerator explains everything," I interrupted. "Did you think I'd forgotten how to read?" The color drained from Joanna's face. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at me with calculating eyes. "We have no idea what you mean? We've been driving back and forth on that highway for hours." I pulled out my phone and found the recording from July 5th. Tobias's voice filled the room. "This trip idea is perfect. We'll drive through those desert areas in New Mexico. Then Joanna's cold calculation. And if something happens to him out there, well, old people get confused. They wander off. Emily stepped back, confusion replacing joy. Lucas looked between his parents and me, sensing tension he couldn't understand. I have recordings, Tobias. Your voices. Your plan. Your greed. I stopped the playback and looked directly at my son. Every word about solving the dad problem and inheriting this house. Tobias made one last desperate attempt at manipulation. Dad, family forgives. We can work through this. Think about Emily and Lucas. They need their grandfather. You stopped being my son when you planned to murder me, I said quietly. You have 1 hour to pack your belongings and leave. Forever. Joanna's mask finally slipped completely. You can't throw us out. We have legal rights. We've lived here for 3 years. As my guests. Guests who planned to kill their host. I held up my phone again. My lawyer receives copies of everything if I don't check in daily. Try to harass me, and you'll discover how seriously the authorities take elder abuse and attempted murder. The next hour passed in frantic packing and muffled arguments. Emily cried softly while helping gather her belongings. I knelt beside her and Lucas. You can visit when you're older, I told them gently. This is about choices your parents made, not about you. Car doors slammed. Engines started. Taillights disappeared into Springfield twilight. I stood alone in my kitchen, looking at the empty refrigerator where my warning note had hung. Martha's favorite mug sat on the counter, waiting for evening tea. I filled it with hot water and sat at our table for 2, now set for 1. Tomorrow I'll call the lawyer anyway. Some lessons need to stick. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.